All right, let's talk about something we all do every single day: eat. But have you ever really stopped to think about the journey your food takes? We're going to follow that incredible path, starting from just a tiny little seed all the way to your local market.
Seriously, just think about it for a second. How does the food on your plate actually get there? It's a way more complex and honestly a way more fascinating process than most of us realize. So let's dig in and find out together.
Okay, so first things first, let's get on the same page. What even is a crop? Well, as you can see, the Hindi word for it is fasal. And a crop isn't just one plant in a pot. Oh no, we're talking about thousands, maybe millions of the exact same kind of plant, grown together on a massive scale, specifically for food. Picture those huge, endless fields of wheat or rice. That is a crop.
Every great story has a beginning, right? Well, for our little seed, its adventure starts with its very first and maybe biggest challenge: getting the ground ready. This is a huge hurdle to overcome before anything else can happen.
Now, this whole farming thing might seem incredibly complicated, but you can actually boil it all down to 7 essential steps. If a farmer nails these 7 things, they're setting themselves up for a fantastic harvest.
So how in the world are you supposed to remember all 7 of those steps and in the right order? Well, there's a really cool little trick for that: a mnemonic. Just remember this phrase: pretty smart agriculture involves working hard smartly. It's a super simple way to keep everything straight. Let me show you how it works.
And there it is. Each letter lines up perfectly. P is for preparation of the soil. S is for sowing the seeds. A is for adding manure and fertilizer. I is for irrigation. W is for weed protection. H is for harvesting, and that last S, that's for storage. Boom! That's our roadmap for this whole journey.
All right, let's circle back to step 1, preparation. Why is it such a big deal? Well, think about it. Loosening up the soil lets the plant's roots dig down deep, giving it a really strong foundation. It also makes the soil a cozy home for all the good guys, like earthworms and microbes. Plus, it brings all the yummy, nutrient-rich soil up to the top, and as a little bonus, it yanks out all the pesky weeds before you even plant anything.
Okay, the stage is set. The soil is perfect. Now it's time for sowing, which is just planting the seeds. But hold on, you can't just throw any old seed in there. The quality of your seed is everything. It literally determines how good your crop will be. So, how do farmers make sure they're planting only the absolute best seeds?
They use this super simple but honestly genius trick. It's called the water test. All they do is dump the seeds into a bucket of water. The good, healthy, dense seeds, they sink right to the bottom. But the damaged, hollow, useless ones, they're lighter, so they just float on top. Isn't that clever? A super low-tech way to guarantee quality from the get-go. So, our champion seed has been chosen and planted. Now comes the next phase: nurturing. It's kind of like taking care of a baby. You've got to make sure this little plant gets all the food and water it needs to grow up big and strong.
When it comes to feeding the plant, farmers basically have 2 main options: manure versus fertilizer. So, what's the difference? Well, manure is the all-natural organic stuff. It's made right there in the fields, and it's amazing for the long-term health of the soil itself. Then you've got fertilizers. These are more like chemical power-ups, made in factories. They give the plant the direct shot of specific nutrients. But here's the key thing to remember: fertilizers feed the plant, while manure feeds the soil.
So that's the food sorted. But what about a drink? That's where irrigation comes into play. It's really just a fancy word for watering the crops yourself. When the rain doesn't show up. It's all about giving them that water at just the right times so they can grow properly.
For hundreds, even thousands of years, the ways of doing this were, well, a lot of hard work. You have things like the mahat, which was a pulley system or a chain pump. There was the dikli, which used a clever lever, and the rahat, a giant wheel turned by an animal like an ox. Super smart for their time, but man, what a workout.
But today, things are a lot different and a lot smarter. You've got sprinkler systems that work kind of like the sprinklers on your lawn, just on a massive scale. And then there's the real game changer: the drip system. This thing is amazing. It delivers water one single drop at a time, right to the roots of each plant. It's incredibly efficient. It saves a ton of water.
All right, our plant is happy. It's got food, it's got water. But don't get too comfortable. Its journey is far from over. There's a constant battle happening right there in the field, an unseen fight for survival.
And who is public enemy number 1 in this fight? Weeds.
These guys are just plants growing where you don't want them to. They're like these little bullies that steal water, sunlight, and all the good nutrients from our main crop. If you let them take over, they can totally ruin the harvest.
So, how do farmers fight back against these invaders? Well, they've got two main lines of attack. First is the old-school hands-on approach, manual removal, literally getting in there and pulling the weeds out by hand or with a tool. The other strategy is more like chemical warfare, spraying special chemicals called weedicides that are designed to kill the weeds but leave the crop unharmed.
So after all that hard work, the soil prep, the nurturing, the constant battle against weeds, we finally get to the best part, the climax of this whole story. It's time to reap the rewards. It is harvest time.
But just cutting the crop down isn't the end of it. Now you have to separate the part you actually eat, the grain, from the rest of the plant. This takes two more steps. First is threshing, which is basically beating the crop to knock the grains loose from the stalk. Then comes winnowing. This is a really cool ancient process where you use the wind to separate the heavy grain from the lightweight husk. The wind just blows all the useless stuff away.
The grain is finally free, but we're still not done. You can't just leave it all in a big pile. Proper storage is absolutely crucial. I mean, why go through all that work just to have it spoil? Good storage protects the grain from getting damp and keeps pests like insects and rats away. It also lets farmers manage supply for the market, and most importantly, it makes sure we all have food to eat year-round.
So we've been following the journey of a crop, from a single seed all the way to a stored grain. But that's only one side of the story. A lot of the food we eat comes from a whole other part of farming that doesn't involve plants at all.
And that other side is what we call animal husbandry. It's the whole science of raising and taking care of farm animals. We're talking about everything from cows for milk and meat, to bees for honey, to fish and fish farms. It's a massive and super important part of where our food comes from.
So there you have it. We've seen the whole process, the 7 steps, the constant challenges, all the clever solutions farmers have come up with over the centuries. Which brings us right back to the very beginning. You, sitting down to have a meal. So the next time you take a bite,
are you going to think about that incredible journey? The whole story of that one single seed? From being carefully chosen to being protected and nurtured, all the way to finally ending up on your plate? It's a pretty amazing process, and definitely something worth appreciating.